isn't goddess, you never got this.
So okay, I've basically proved that Jesus isn't God, and now I'm going to prove how evil this Bible is. Well, the first few chapters are pretty much just up to Esther, I would say, anything up to Esther, not including Genesis. I like Genesis, but that's because it's first. First has to be kind of special, but anything between Exodus and Esther, it just seems almost impossible to read because my brain just thinks why, it's a bit pointless. I think the only purpose of those books were really to just get people interested in reading. I'm a really bad reader because I'm dyslexic, so reading it is kind of hard for me, but when it comes to Exodus, to the one before Esther, it just seems almost impossible to read. They're all stories about kings and stuff like that, and there's loads of laws. I mean, it's just stupid laws.
So that was what I thought of the first part of the Old Testament back in 2014. I still don't like those books because I'm dyslexic and I find it kind of hard to read when it's in paragraphs. I prefer it when it's kind of in like parables. But the things that happen in those first books, it's horrible. There's a huge amount of murder, sacrifice. I'm not going to go into the list, but there's a huge number of terrible things that this Lord is supposed to promote and encourage, and things that he actually commands his people to do. He commands his people to kill other people that have a different religion or belief. And I think it's more just a reflection of how bad people were back then.
The Leviticus as well, as it's got so many ridiculous laws that just aren't true and just promote sacrifice and slaughter and bloodshed. If a man sleeps with his father's wife, both the wife, the father, and the adulterer must be put to death. And this one's just saying that even the innocent party must be put to death. Okay, there's loads and loads of people that are against gay marriage, and when they're against gay marriage, they use this Bible to try and hurt people, and they say things like, oh yeah, Leviticus 18:22. Do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman, that is detestable. So they use things like that and say, hey gays, hey gays, hey gays. And then what they actually leave out is the fact that, like, 10 lines later, do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. So all those gay protesters that are using the Bible to try and promote their anti-gay stuff, they're saying you shouldn't be gay because of something that was said in the book. But at the same time, most of them do shave and most of them do cut the hair off the edges. So they're basically just being massive hypocrites because they're saying you should follow what it says in the Bible, and yet on the other hand, they're not following what's said in the Bible. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoos on yourself. Well, I'm sure most of these anti-gay protesters do have tattoos or piercings on their body. So there again, you've done something that God has told you not to. Well, I mean, if Leviticus is a true word of God, then you've done something that is not happy. If a man marries both women and her mother, it is wicked, and he and they must burn in a fire. It's true that a man shouldn't marry both a mother and a daughter, but they shouldn't necessarily be burnt into fire for their wickedness. If a man sleeps with his aunt, he has dishonoured his uncle. Well, that's duh. He will be held responsible. They will die childless. So what happens if they do have a child? I mean, does that kind of indicate that their children would have to die first and then them? And that's killing children. If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, the wife and his neighbour and both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death. And also, just a page later, it also says, a man or woman who is a medium or spiritualist among you must be put to death, or you are to stone them. Their blood will be on their own heads. Okay, so on the same book that's saying that a man should not lie with another man, it also says that you should stone mediums. Then after Esther, notice a girl's name, suddenly the book changes and it starts to go in about how all this destruction against Jerusalem and stuff like that.
The God of the Old Testament is a vile tyrant that does want to kill people, and I think even the strong Jesus-loving Christians would agree that some of the things in the older books are very disgusting and not something that should be encouraged or promoted in this age. But a lot of people like to think that, okay, it's just the newer books that promote a loving God, whereas it's just the older books that promote an evil God. But I'm kind of wanting to prove that God is a pretty horrible person in both the older books, the second half of the Old Testament, and in the New Testament. I'm not going to focus on the very earlier books, Exodus and stuff, because it is all stories of murder and stuff, but I'm going to focus on the next part, which is mostly about the suffering of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, caused by this evil tyrant. And literally about a third of the Old Testament is about the suffering of this woman or this other person, also called Job, Jacob's trouble. He's referred to as a servant of God, often called a he, sometimes called a she, but this person comes under many names.
A lot of the Bible, a lot of the Christianity just goes on about the destruction of the holy city, and of course the people in the holy city aren't going to be very happy about that. I mean, how would you like it if China had a whole religion that was based on sort of the destruction of London and New York? I mean, I'm sure the London and the England and America wouldn't be very happy about that. So other religions started being formed, but what actually was is that Jerusalem was actually the name of the real God, and this was how the world was divided up. It needed to be divided up just because, you know, you could be Jewish in one life and then Christian in the other, and when you were Jewish you would kind of learn that actually Christianity isn't correct, but when you die you'd be born into a Christianity, but because of all this false doctrine that you'd be pampered onto, suddenly you'd be made to believe that actually it is. So I'm putting a lot of insult into Christianity, but it doesn't mean that the people that are born into a Christian life, you know, it doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that they've just been getting this false doctrine and they've believed it. It doesn't mean that the people in other religions are any smarter, because if they were born into a Christian family then they'd probably be brought up in exactly the same way. And so I know there's a lot of wars between these religions, but the truth is that you could hate, say if you hate the Christians for or the persecution that they've caused, you never know, in your past life you could have actually been a Christian and you could have been one of the people that were causing all this sort of, or causing destruction, and then when you died you've been reborn as a different religion, so you can try and see things in a different light.
To give you a brief history on what I know about Christianity, you know, up till 2014, I didn't want to have anything to do with Christianity. My parents were strongly Christian, and I was brought up, I guess, as a child as a Christian, because my granny's part of many Christian organisations, and I went on loads of Christian camps as a child. But ever since the age of 6, you know, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that a guy 2,000 years ago could walk on water. I didn't believe that he was the son of God. The whole story and all the Bible stories just seemed like a bunch of nonsense to me, and I strongly believed that. I think I officially stopped being a Christian when I first saw a ghost at the age of 8. I think I saw a few ghosts when I was a child, but when I was 8 I saw a ghost, and one of the Christian leaders said, "Ghosts don't exist, that's not what the Bible teaches." And I was just like, well, if the Bible doesn't teach that ghosts exist and I've seen one, then that just proves that the Bible is wrong. And I kind of just said to myself, you know, if Christianity doesn't believe in ghosts, then I'm not a Christian, because I now believe in ghosts. And if the Bible wasn't teaching about ghosts, then it's proving that there's something wrong with the Bible. And, well, there's a lot of things wrong with the Bible, but it was about the age of 6 that I didn't want to believe in Christianity, and it was about the age of 8 that I officially said, you know, that's it, I hate Christianity. I'll still go to the camps because I enjoy the sports and activities that they would do, and the girls that go to these camps were quite nice and I enjoyed it. But I just kind of blanked my ears out when it came to the teachings of the Bible. Also, between the age of 8 and 11, one of my best friends was actually a Hindu girl, so she didn't have the same belief as everyone else, and if someone was going to tell me that she couldn't get into heaven because of this, you know, she's the nicest girl that I knew, and I don't want to support any religion that says that she can't get into heaven because she's born into a different family who have different beliefs. Anyway, that's kind of my background in Christianity. I think I have been told stuff, but my memory's really bad. I blank things out if I don't think it's important, and Christianity and everything about it was just one of those things that you blank it out. I think I remember parts about Satan and the devil, but I'm not too sure if I knew about Lucifer, and I didn't know that the Bible was all about a marriage. I didn't know about the bride of Christ. I didn't even know that Israel was like the main topic of the Bible. And so at the time that I wrote this, I literally didn't know anything about the Bible, but now that I was seeing the connections with my name and the power of it, I realized that I was the Messiah that the Bible was prophesying about. And so because of that, I thought that I should start reading over the Bible. I've now been waiting a whole year for people to come and get to me. They weren't coming to get me and help me, so I had to turn to the Bible and try to analyze it, so that way I can give you my teaching of what I believe that the Bible is actually saying, not what it's literally saying.
And the fact that you haven't woken up to the fact that this isn't true. I mean, if you actually listen to some of the things that are said about Babylon, for example, daughter of Babylon, no more will you be called tender and delicate. Take millstones and grind flour. Take off your veil, lift up your skirt, bare your legs, and wade through the streams. Your nakedness will be exposed, and your shame uncovered. I mean, just the things that it says. I mean,
If this is supposed to be the word of the Lord, then the Lord is a horrible person that is literally torturing this woman and doing horrible things to her. You know, why would you worship someone that wants to hurt others or hurt someone else? You know, preachers love to preach about how God loves everyone, so if that's the case, then why is he treating this woman like crap? But of course, it's even worse in the Christians' cases, because people who read this Bible and believe in the story, you know, they believe that this is what God is saying about Babylon being a nation of people.
In those countries, they like covering themselves up, and so if someone was going to say that this is going to happen in your country and everyone's going to be stripped naked and have, I mean, I like wearing shorts, but in there they do like covering up. And this book is saying that everyone in Babylon, because they don't think that it's a person, they think that this is a city, everyone's going to be made to strip down naked and stuff, and this just really isn't nice. And it says, disaster will come upon you, and you will not know how to conjure it away. A calamity will fall upon you that you cannot ward off with a ransom. A catastrophe that you cannot foresee will suddenly come upon you. Keep on then with your magic spells and with your many sorceries which you have laboured since childhood. Perhaps you will succeed, perhaps you will cause terror. You know, if this is talking about a nation of people, then it's just kind of really insulting, and the people that live in these places, you know, they're going to come up with a different religion because they're not going to agree with any of this. And because they're not going to agree with any of this, this is going to be called the division, and the division is going to cause wars, and wars are just stupid, and it's not what God wants. But at the same time, the fact that people are willing to believe this is kind of or support it or like the idea of this happening to a whole city of people. I guess this is why people needed to suffer, because you're not a particularly nice person if you like the sound of this happening to someone else's town or time or whatever it's supposed to represent. But I've highlighted all the things that I think are just terrible, and I'm sure there's lots more that I could add in it. But yeah,
you can see from that book that I have just pretty much spent ages and ages, hours, days, months, just going through that book, trying to edit it, saying all the things that are wrong with it. And yeah, everything in yellow was something that was wrong, or something that is pointing to the fact that God is a female. Everything in yellow is basically the suffering of this woman, who's constantly suffering throughout the whole book, and yet you're completely oblivious to the fact that this is the real sacrifice, because you're all too self-absorbed, because you're too busy wanting other people to suffer, that you're not willing to realize that this woman is the real Christ.
It's hidden throughout the pages. Most of Jeremiah. Lamentations is another strong one. My eyes fell weep from weeping. I am tormented within. My heart is pounding within. My heart is pounded out of the ground because of my people, because my children infants faint in the streets in the city. O daughter of Jerusalem, to what can I liken you, that I may comfort you? O virgin daughter of Zion, your wound is deep as the sea. Your visions are of your prophets were false and worthless. They did not expose your sin to ward off your captivity. The oracles they gave you were false and misleading. Well, yeah, this is the real God, and this is saying that pretty much all the prophets, as in the people that wrote this book, were just all false and telling crap to mislead people, and that's just what happened. But it's not my fault. I mean, I didn't deliberately do this. It's kind of just people believing in crap and not willing to accept the truth. We have swallowed her up. This is the day we have waited for. We have lived to see it. You know, the day someone gets swallowed up. This isn't talking about Jesus. You can tell this isn't talking about Jesus. This throughout this book, there seems to be someone screaming, saying, this world is shit, and this is not something that will just be caused over 3 days. This is something that's caused over a lifetime of suffering. He has fulfilled his word, which he has described long ago. He has overthrown you with pity, and he has let out, and he has let the enemy gloat over you. He has exalted the horn of your foes. Your heart of your people cry out to the Lord. O the wall of the daughter of Zion, let your tears flow out like a river day and night. Give yourself no relief, your eyes no rest. Arise, cry out in the night, and watch. And the watchers of the night began. Pour out your heart like water in the presence of the Lord. Lift up your hands to him. for the life of your children, from whom fate with hunger. I mean, this sounds disgusting. This sounds like the Lord is saying, or it's like saying God is saying, yes, cry out to me, and all your children are going to suffer and in pain and die of starvation and hunger, and it's just disgusting. It's a horrible portrayal of God. And on one hand, if this is the word of God, then it basically sounds like God is in severe pain day and night, and Jesus was not in severe pain for day and night. Or two, it sounds like God is a complete monster and just like happy to see this happen.
It seems like there's two kind of gods, one which is the torturer and one which is supposed to be the suffering Messiah. And well, this clearly is the real suffering Messiah, this Zion that's crying every night. But both of the portrayals are pretty bad. I mean, one portrays her as someone who's just going through extreme agony and no one seems to give a shit because everyone's too sexist to believe that it's a female. They're thinking this Zion is just some random person who they obviously don't really care about because they don't seem to even know who this person is. The person who's suffering in the book, they do just believe that it's some person who lived a long time ago who was worshipping the Father. And yet this sort of language takes up most of the book. And then on the other hand, you've got this horrible vile thing that does this torturing of Zion. But people are too sexist to realise that it is a woman. Either that or stupid. The preachers have told you that God's a man, and you're going to believe that. And you're going to completely ignore the evidence. You're going to completely ignore the fact that this woman is the underdog throughout the whole book. She's the one that's suffering. She's the one that's being persecuted, and yet you're the one who's ignoring her.
At the beginning of Lamentations, it says, "Who like a widow is she? Who was so great amongst the nations? She was queen amongst the provinces. How now she become a slave? Bitterly she weeps at night, tears upon her cheek. Among all her lovers there is none to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. After affliction and harsh labour, Judah has gone into exile. She dwells amongst the nations. She finds no resting place. All who pursue her have overtaken her in the midst of her distress. The roads to Zion mourn, for no one comes to her appointed feasts." Yeah, the appointed feasts being like all the feasts on earth, because, you know, Jesus didn't actually make all these feasts. All these feasts that are made are actually all pagan feasts. So therefore, this daughter of Zion is obviously the true God, as in perhaps a pagan god or something, a real God, the one that actually makes feasts, one that actually knows her date of birth, one that actually knows when things happen. Because Jesus, he was supposed to be. People don't actually know his birth date, so they just worshipped him around the sun god. They don't know when he really died or got raised again, so they worship at the same time the Easter god, pagan fertility goddess, was born. You don't really know anything about Jesus, but yeah, this is all her appointed feasts. This is a person that they're talking about. Her foes has become her masters, her enemies are at ease. The Lord... They're at ease because they think Jesus is God, and they think they're okay because they think just believing Jesus is God is true when it's just not. The Lord has brought her grief because of her many sins. Well, what is her sins? I mean, what are her sins? It's just going on about how horrible and how she weeps and how... I mean, even if she does have sins, why does she deserve to feel like this? Her children have gone into exile captive for her foes. If you just read Leviticus, read the book and notice, and don't just see what you want to see what's actually there.
You know, I'm not a supporter of the Quran. Muhammad wasn't a prophet of mine. He worshipped the God of Abraham, and Abraham isn't a real person, and the God of Abraham is a terrible person, or spirit, should I say. I don't even want to call it a person. It's not a he or a she, it's an it. But it's what you wanted to worship back then, because you were all terrible people. Terrible people love to worship other terrible people. But at least the Quran doesn't go on about the constant suffering of Jerusalem or Israel. It's not all about pain and suffering and torturing others and killing people, murdering, torturing animals. Yes, there are some bad lines in it, but there's a lot more bad lines in the Bible. True, there are some good verses in the Bible, but not really. People love to go on about how they have Christian values. What are Christian values? The idea of running away from your town and your wife to go off and live in a cage where you rape your daughters, get them pregnant, and then make out that they're the ones that raped you? That's what the Bible says. The Bible says the daughters got the father drunk and then raped him. This is the story of the one and only good person in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, also known as the story of Lot. But if you know anything about reality, you'll know that if you're really that drunk and you don't remember anything the next day, there's a very small chance that you were able to get an erection and have sex last night. Also, how many daughters do you know rape their own fathers? But how many fathers do you know rape their own daughters? Clearly, that story is a twisted lie, designed solely to make women look bad. But now that I'm here to tell the real story, you can feel bad for giving praise to this dickhead. Or what about this as a Christian value? The idea of saving you and your family and letting the whole of your species just die and drown in a flood? Or what about the work of Jesus, teaching how other people are of the devil and only people that worship Jesus are people that are good people? Only those people are the ones that are welcome into heaven. Only those are the ones that are going to be saved at the end of the age. So everyone else can just, go to hell because they believe in something different to what you believe in. Isn't the values of Christianity so amazing? Preach to them till they believe what you believe, and if they don't, then just say to yourself they're going to go to hell. But it's only happening because they didn't listen to me, so it's their fault really. Although the smarter ones who have accepted the fact that this woman is a real person and is the sacrifice, they're the ones that are actually ignoring me right now, and they're the ones that are actually causing me to go through this suffering. And so I hate you. You're not on my side. None of you are on my side. I haven't agreed to any of this. I haven't agreed for them to ignore me for this amount of time. I don't know where you're getting your information from, but I hope that the demon that you worship destroys you far worse than what it's done to me. Also, your hope of redemption is zilch right now, because I won't save any of you. So both the ones who know about me and the ones who don't know about me, you're all as sick as each other, and I hope you stay on this hellhole forever.
Okay, people think that Jesus is God because he supposedly fulfilled quite a lot of the prophecies that were foretold in earlier books before he came. But if you actually read the earlier books, you'll see that actually very few of the prophecies were things that he fulfilled. In Job 7:3, he says, "So I've been allotted months of frugality. Nights of misery have been assigned to me. When I lie down, I think, how long will it be before I get up? The nights drag on. I toss and turn till dawn." Okay, that never happened to Jesus. Jesus' suffering lasted a day. He was captured. He knew it was happen. He had an option to be saved by the crowd, and they chose not to save him, and so then he got crucified. He would have gone through a lot of suffering during that night, but it definitely wasn't months and months of misery and him lying in bed thinking, oh, when am I going to get up? This sounds like someone that's been in prison for a very long time, and Jesus never went through any kind of imprisonment in the books. "If I have sinned, what have I done to you? O watchman, why have you made me a target? Have I become a burden to you?" Okay, Jesus didn't have any watchmen when he was going through his suffering. If only there was someone to attribute between us, to lay his hand upon both of us, someone to remove God's rod from me, so that his terror would frighten me no more. Then I speak without any fear of him, but as it now stands with me, I cannot. Whoever this person is, it sounds like he's at war with God, and he's saying, oh God, please remove these rods from me and stop chaining me up or something like that. And, well, God didn't chain Jesus up. It was people that chained Jesus up. Jesus wasn't God's sacrifice, because everything that happened to Jesus happened because of men, and because he refused he wasn't willing to tell something that he didn't believe was true. He wasn't willing to say, no, I'm not the Son of God. So that's why he went through that persecution. For someone to be a God sacrifice, it has to be someone that God has specifically punished. According to the scripture, it's saying this person is fearing God, and Jesus didn't actually fear God. He was happy to go to him, and he knew that what was going to happen, and he was happy for it to continue. But this doesn't sound like the same person, because this sounds like someone that doesn't want it to happen and is trying to avoid the persecution. "I will say to God, do not condemn me, but tell me what charges you have against me." The charges against Jesus were that he was a man claiming to be a god, or claiming to be the Son of God, and that's why he was tried. So this person doesn't know what his charges are. This person is just like saying, oh, what are my charges? Tell me, God, what have I done wrong? Because I don't know what I've done wrong. That's basically not what Jesus was, because he knew why he was being sacrificed.
I know you can claim that I've been going around telling people that I'm God, but I haven't. At the time that I made this, I was suffering. I was suffering every day at the time that I made this film. And I wasn't going around telling people that I was Christ because I knew people wouldn't believe me. So I just kind of was waiting, and I was suffering every day, and I didn't understand why this persecution was being done to me. I didn't know what I'd done wrong. I hadn't done anything. I kept believing every week that it would be fine, that God wouldn't hurt me, but the evidence was proving that that's not the case, because it's been a whole year right now. I'd just been lying in a bed for a whole year. This guy who I thought liked me had just walked away, and all the songs were saying that he was going to come back to me, but he wasn't. And now I was starting to realize what a lie this was, and it just became obvious that I still don't have a clue what's happening, and I'm trying to read the Bible to find out the answers, but the Bible isn't really giving me the answers, because one minute it says the name of the Lord is powerful, and well, my name is very powerful, and so it's pointing out that I'm the Lord. But on the other hand, there seems to be another Lord that just wants to torment and cause me to go through a huge amount of suffering, and I was scared of this thing. I don't know what it was. I didn't want to believe in it because I don't believe in demons. But at the same time, I had been suffering a lot for a year now, and I had no idea it was going to go on as long as it had been going on. And I just had no sign or clue that it might actually end, because everyone was just lying to me.
Does it please you to oppress me, to scorn the work of your hands, while you smile on the schemers of the wicked? Jesus didn't think that God was smiling down on him, and I don't think God was smiling down on him. I mean, how could a God smile down on someone that's being tortured in that kind of way, like being whipped and murdered? You know, if someone's being murdered, God is not going to go smiling down on this person. So whatever kind of torture the real sacrifice of God is, it's not going to be something that involves torture, because I'm sure God would not smile down on someone that's going through torture. Where if the torture is more just kind of confusion, well, maybe it wouldn't be as bad if a God looked down on sort of confusion rather than actual physical torture.
Before, I thought God was me, and I thought that yes, me, myself, in the spirit was looking down and kind of not really caring about what I was going through, because, you know, I didn't think it was going to last for 3.5 years. If I was only going to suffer for a year, then maybe I would look down and just be like, oh yeah, I can handle that, that's nothing. But for 3.5 years, you know, I know that there is another God, and that God is evil and wicked, and that is why it's looking down on me and smiling, because it gets pleasure from seeing people suffer. I'm pretty sure that there is a God that does take pleasure from seeing people suffer. And that is the only reason why this God would be staring down at the suffering Christ and smiling.
Does it please you to oppress me, to scorn the work of your hands, while you smile on the schemers of the wicked?
But Jesus believed that God the Father was all loving and all good. So if God the Father was all loving and all good, why would he be looking down on his suffering and smiling at the same time?
If you look at things like Madonna's films, nothing really matters.
When I was very young, I was the only one.
There's 3 girls screaming here, and you can see that there's one girl lying sort of looking like she's dead on the floor, and just before she falls onto the floor, they put 3 marks on her back. I know you can't blame Madonna for this, because she wouldn't have had any idea that this was about to happen. So this is basically God laughing at this third person, saying, your life doesn't really matter, because that's what the song is, nothing really matters.
But then again, they have known about the 3 for about 9 months now, so it's possible that they've just gone and re-edited these videos because they don't give a shit about this third person. But they can't be responsible for this video, and it's so true.
That I don't want to kick it with you.
You know that I'm not guilty, and that no one can rescue me from your hand. He could have been rescued. He could have just been like, no, I'm not a god. Jesus' death meant absolutely nothing, in the sense that why would his death make any difference to anything? It was a reason why the Bible was written, but according to this book, Jesus wasn't guilty. And well, he was guilty because he was a man saying to be a god. I mean, even Babylon the Great, when she comes down, the Antichrist, you know, she actually admits that it's going to be blasphemy, so it's going to be a man saying to be God. So therefore she's not committing a crime, because she says that yes, I am a man and I am claiming to be a god, because that's what she will do when she comes down. And therefore she is not guilty because she's telling the truth. Whereas Jesus is guilty of being a man claiming to be a god, because yes, he was a man, and yes, well, he might have thought that he was a god. So, your hands have shaped me and made me, will you now turn to destroy me? God didn't destroy Jesus, it was people that did that. And drowning in affliction, if I hold up my head, you stalk me like a lion, and again display your awesome power against me. God didn't display any power against him. It was people that chose for him to be executed. It was not God's, well, it was planned, it had to happen, but God didn't actually make it happen. It was just people doing it to him. You bring your witnesses against me and increase your anger towards me. Your forces come against me wave upon wave. He didn't have forces coming upon him wave upon wave. I guess he had people that didn't like him because he was spreading gospel that was contrast to what they believed at the time. But I don't think it would have really been like wave after wave. Why did you bring me out of the womb? I wish I would have died before any eyes saw me. No, I don't think Jesus said that. And from the sort of persona or the personality that's described about Jesus, nowhere in the book does he say he wishes that he would have died before he would have been born. So the person who this is talking about is someone who's had a pretty shit life throughout their whole life and has pretty much wanted to die their whole life. So you're talking about someone who is suicidal throughout all of it. And Jesus in his parts never mentioned anything about feeling suicidal. If only I had never come into being or been carried straight from the womb to the grave. Are not my few days almost over? Turn away from me so that I can have a moment's joy. So again, yeah, this person that's just having crap after crap after crap and is going through a whole lifetime worth of suffering. And Jesus, he had followers, he had disciples, he had crowds of people supporting him, and he was kind of creating an interest. Yeah, there would have been people hating him as well, but this person sounds like someone who's just had a whole lifetime of neglect rather than a whole lifetime full of people following him. So yeah, it's clearly not talking about Jesus. Oh, how I wish God would speak. According to Jesus, you could speak to God, you just needed to speak it in your heart. So whoever this person is saying that I want to talk to God, but God isn't talking to me, God isn't answering me, God isn't doing anything. And disclose the secrets of wisdom, for true wisdom has two sides. It's true that wisdom has two sides, but Jesus only already talked about one side. He talked about like the bad seed and the good seed, and he didn't really see the side of the bad. He only just saw the sides of the good. So whoever this is someone who believes clearly in both yin and yang, and is desperately trying to talk to God about finding answers and secret wisdom. So according to this person doesn't know everything and is really wanting to know what the hell's going on, from the sounds of the portrayal of the real sacrifice. But I have a mind as well as you, and I am not inferior to you. It's basically saying that I'm like the same as everyone else. I'm not inferior to anyone. I treat myself as being the same as everyone else, whereas Jesus, in one of his parts, says, if you love your mother and father more than me, you are not worthy of me. And therefore, by saying that, he's saying that actually he is inferior to other people, whereas this says that whoever this person is, she doesn't feel like she is inferior.
Although I have to point out that that's how I felt 3 years ago. After a very long time of suffering and just having people just ignore me and not give a shit, I am inferior because I'm a lot stronger than you, I'm a lot older than you, I'm a lot wiser than you, and I don't deserve to be here, so that makes me inferior. This person suffering in the Bible is actually inspired by me, although not every line is true, because I don't believe that this thing that's destroying me is the thing that made me. I believe that I made myself, like I always do. But I think it's accurate in most of the cases, I wish I was dead, I wish I was never born, I don't want to be here, I hate this world, I hate the people in it. Everyone's turned their back against me, and I can't understand every single day why not one person gave me any thought that it would be a good idea to warn me that I have a very long wait. I've got a slight change of attitude right now. I also can't help but stare at how bad my ends are. Last week, which is the summer of 2016, I finally got round to having a haircut, and I only paid £3 for it. That was the only reason why I got it done. But they ended up chopping like 3 inches off my hair because I hadn't had a haircut in like 4 years. So at this point, it's been about 2 years since I had a haircut. But yeah, I think that's symbolic of how I'm going to end up, having a really bad end. That's just, well, as bad as my ends there in the picture. But last week they all cut it all off. It's a lot shorter now, but my ends are very healthy now. So maybe that's a sign that the new age is beginning. Yay.
I've become a laughingstock to my friends. Jesus never became a laughingstock to his friends. His friends were his friends. They might have denied him, but not a laughingstock. His followers seem to respect him. So, yeah, that's not true.
But I, on the other hand, did feel like I was becoming a laughing stock, because all the people that I would see, the clients, and they wouldn't believe me and they wouldn't really care. And all the singers and celebrities, they were kind of like just turning my pain into entertainment. And so I felt like they were just kind of laughing at me and not realizing how horrible every single day was for me. I also work as a masseuse. I don't have any money. I don't have a real form of income. My job is an embarrassment. My life is an embarrassment. I don't have any friends. You know how embarrassing this is, to have my life exposed like this, to be really famous and yet have not one person help me, have such a shit life and yet have everyone know about what I'm going through and yet just not care.
13:21. Draw your hand far from me and stop frightening me with your terrors. God never tortured Jesus, and Jesus never showed any indication that he was afraid of God in any kind of way. Why do you hide your face and consider me your enemy? So here the sacrifice on earth is saying how he feels that God is an enemy, and that she's again in war with God. Jesus, there's no indication that Jesus felt like he was at war with God and that God had become his enemy. Maybe on those last few days where he died, he might have done, but if you think about how many millions of people have been crucified, I'm pretty sure every single one of those people that died in a sort of crucifixion way felt exactly the same way that Jesus would have felt, which is that God isn't caring for him. But at the same time, I don't think they would actually consider God as an enemy and consider me an enemy. Why do you hide your face and consider me an enemy? It's one thing to go through suffering, but people wouldn't say that, oh, I feel like God is my enemy. This is something, this sort of indicates that this person's going through supernatural torture, and therefore it can only be God, and therefore this person feels like only God is torturing. And it makes sense if there are three horsemen of the apocalypse. You've got the first one that gives birth to half monkey, half human, and then you've got the second one that has a good life but dies at a young age, made lots of videos, and then is reborn like a phoenix, because that's what the people are waiting for. They're waiting for someone to have a life and then die and then be reborn straight after. And this third life that she's having, this is where all the torture happens. And I bet when she would see a video like this, she would think that yes, God is just laughing at me and doesn't really give a toss. This is something like that is proof that God is like an enemy, because that's how this person would be feeling if she watched these things. Whereas Jesus, it wasn't God that did the torturing, it was humans. And when the humans were torturing him, he wouldn't have looked at them and thought, oh yeah, this is God that's doing this. No, he would have looked at them and thought, these are bad people doing this. He wouldn't have blamed God. For you write bitter things against me and make me inherit the sins of my youth. So why did he inherit the sins of his youth? I mean, what did he do in his childhood that deserved to be a sacrifice for the whole world? I mean, that just doesn't make sense. I mean, if this person is actually Eve and he's saying, make you a sacrifice for inheritance of my youth, as in my youth I gave birth to a half-born, half-human, half-monkey, and I'm now paying for the sins of that, which is the conversion of monkeys to humans, and giving the humans intelligence, which would have led to millions of people being killed, because as soon as they have the intelligence to invent metal and things like that, they would have used them for bad purposes as well as good purposes. But yeah, that when it says, and make me inheritance of the sins of my youth, that's what it's talking about. It's talking about Eve's, the inheritance she has to sort of pay off the things that she did, which is making humans. For you write down bitter things against me. God never wrote down bitter things about Jesus. There's portrayed in the Bible as, well, he's being perfect. I mean, of course, if you actually read it, you think that actually there's quite a lot of bad things, but people don't see it as being bad things. People think that everything that he said was good and was true and was right, and therefore, why is this person saying, for you write down bitter things against me? Because God hasn't written bitter things about me. But if this person is actually Eve or Babylon or Zion, then yeah, there's tons of bad things written about this person. So this person is asking God, why do you write down bitter things against me? Why are you calling me a prostitute? Why are you calling me a whore? So it talks again about the battle between the mortal on earth and God.
In summer 2014, when I said God, I thought I was talking about the sort of higher me that was putting me through this.
It's like the war between, like, a mortal only has a mortal brain, therefore a mortal only remembers the things that happened in her life, whereas God will remember everything.
But now that I know how bad it was going to get, I need to cross out the word God with demoned, because I think that's what it actually is. The thing that is forcing me to suffer is not a god, but rather a demon. Although if you define the word God as meaning just something with a lot of power and influence, then yes, I guess it is a god, but I don't want people to see it as a god, because I believe giving worship to it and giving praise to it is why there's so much chaos on earth, because people are worshipping the wrong things. But someone has been influencing these books, and someone has told these people who wrote the books that I must be ignored for 1,260 days. I don't know who did this, but I know that I wouldn't do that, and so something else has, because humans wouldn't just come up with this random date, because they wouldn't have any idea that a woman is actually going to come down and suffer. They're just being inspired by something. I think they're being inspired by both me and it, but unfortunately it managed to get in quite a high number of days. I don't know how, I don't know why. I'm furious that this has happened. That's all I can say.
I mean, no one else, very few people in here, other maybe than Judah or something, are portrayed off as bad people. That if they were talking about a person, as in a specific person, the only real person that's been portrayed in this book as being bad is Babylon, the great whore. And so when it says, "For you write down bitter things against me," that is Babylon saying, "Why are you writing down bad things about me? Why is God writing about bad things?" It's actually the same person, and the mortal doesn't understand why this is all happening, because it makes no sense, because to a mortal these things wouldn't make any sense, whereas to God sees it as a different thing, because she sees it on through the timetable. But that's what it's talking about.
Jesus said,
"Offences will be sealed up in a bag, and you will cover over my sins." Jesus is supposed to be perfect, and therefore it can't be we're talking about him, because there's nothing to cover over if he's supposed to be perfect, because you can't cover over sins if something's perfect. So yeah, it's talking about someone that does have some sins, although to them a sin is just looking at someone lustfully, and I'm sure pretty much everyone's done that. So yeah, that's silly. Are you the first man ever born? Well, Jesus definitely wasn't, but Adam and Eve were, although Adam was actually a monkey, so technically Eve was, but it doesn't say that part because people couldn't believe. People always thought that men were better, and so that had to be a deception.
Jesus said when he comes back,
"I will not find a wise man among you." Well, there's a lot of people that do believe in Jesus, so if Jesus was the real God, he would find a wise man. This sacrifice, the person on earth, is going to just think that everyone's stupid and no one is wise, and well, if it's a woman and no one is worshipping a woman as a sole creator, perhaps other than the pagans, although pagans believe in multiple gods as well as Mother Earth. So if God the creator is a woman, then she probably would come down and find that no one has any wisdom, because no one believes that the sole creator is both a woman and is both going to live on earth as a human. They just think that God can't live as a human, and therefore to her she's going to think that no one is smart. Whereas if Jesus came down, he wouldn't think that, because Jesus has lots of followers. He has millions of followers, so that's not something Jesus would think. In the face of darkness, they say light is near. Well, there's so many Christians that have been like, yes, I've seen the light, I've been born again. And well, they're the ones that this book is referring to. They think they found the light when really they don't, because they're worshipping Jesus. And if you read what Jesus says in Matthew's, you'll realise that actually 50% of it just isn't true, and the rest is about demon possession. And occasionally he says some things that are accurate, but most of it just isn't true. Like, he says not to worry about food and water and stuff, and it's like, well, you need to, because that's how you live. My days have passed, my plans have shattered. Even to the point of death, Jesus still believed that he was going to go to heaven. Jesus still had hope in him, and therefore it can't be talking about him, because this person pretty much feels like she's completely given up on life and feels like her plans have shattered. So all the things that she wanted to do, perhaps maybe becoming famous or becoming a singer, I mean, all the things that she's ever wanted to do in her life have just pretty much just been shattered down. And well, Jesus, even when he died, he knew that he was going to die and be raised up again, so therefore his plans weren't shattered. If the only hope for me is the grave, if I spread out my bed in darkness. Again, doesn't sound like something Jesus would say, because he had hope that he was going to go into heaven and be with his Father. So it's portraying a completely different person. Where is my hope then? Who can see hope for me? Will I go down to the gates of death? Will we descend together into dust? This person, yes, clearly has no hope. And Jesus, how he's portrayed, he has loads of hope, and he does think that things are going to get better. So whoever this is someone that's pretty much just thinks this world is shit and just is confused about what's happening. The vigour of his step is weakened, his own schemes thrown down on him. His feet thrust him into a net.
Jesus wasn't in a trap. He was given a chance to go free. He just needed to say he wasn't God, but he didn't say that, hence he wasn't in a trap. He chose to call himself a god, knowing that he was about to be sacrificed, hence he basically chose to be sacrificed. So it's not talking about him.
Terrors settle him every side, and a dog at his every step. To me, dog is like a boy, a guy, a boyfriend or something like that, a dog.
You know how dog is kind of like a slang name for like a man, I guess. Hey dog, what are you up to? So it's kind of similar to me because this guy has been bugging me, but it can't be similar to what Jesus is going through because I really don't think he had a dog following him around.
Terrors settle him on every side. Terrors didn't settle him on every side. He went through a torture and he died, but terrors weren't on every side. I suppose the small crowd were, but it's talking about something different. You can tell. Disaster is ready for him when he falls. When he falls. Jesus wasn't said anywhere about him falling. Although on the other hand, Babylon the Great, she falls. You know, Babylon the Great has fallen. And here it says disaster is ready when he falls. So I think it's talking about Babylon the Great, when she falls to earth. It eats away part of his skin. There's no indication of anything eating away part of the skin, but I think that's more of a spiritual skin rather than physical. He is torn from the security of his tent. He is marched off to the king of terrors. He was marched off to a king, but I don't think God would really call him king of terrors. I mean, I'm sure there was loads of other kings that were just as bad. But it does make sense, however, if the king of terrors is actually Satan, as in Babylon's boyfriend or partner. And then it goes straight on to talk about fire resides in his tent, burning sulphur is scattered over his dwellings. Jesus was never burnt with fire nor burning sulphur, but in the book, Babylon the Great is referred to as dying with sort of fire and tent, burning sulphur and fire resides in his tent. I mean, that's what's supposed to have happened to Babylon, and it's happened straight after meeting the king of terrors. So therefore, when Babylon meets her partner rejects her, and then she goes through a sort of desperately needing him when he's rejecting her. I mean, that's more accurate of what it sounds like. It's not about Jesus, because Jesus didn't get burnt. He wasn't burnt alive or anything. How long will you torment me and crush me with words? God didn't crush him with words, but this is supposed to be the word of God. And so whoever this torment is referring to is clearly reading this book. And you use humiliation against me. Well, yeah, if you're sort of referring to this person as a lamb or as a whore or things like that, then yeah, this is, I guess, it's his humiliation, because everyone is thinking that Jesus is God, and when this person is going to try and find help, they're not going to believe her because they're just going to think she's a crazy woman, and they're not actually going to think that any of this could be about a woman. Just like it says, you know, when Jesus comes, they'll just shove her out of the house, and how many of you will welcome me in? And because you will think it's a guy, you'll say that you'll invite him in, but when it actually turns out to be a girl, you wouldn't, because you'll be like, hey, you're not what I've been worshipping. And because she doesn't know the date of how long this torture is going to go on for, it's going to feel like humiliation. Then know that God has wronged me and drawn his net around me. So basically, when this woman comes and says that actually I am the whore of Babylon and I'm not actually a whore, then people will know that actually God, the person who's kind of influenced this book, is going to know that actually, yes, God was wrong, and this woman isn't a bad person, but she had to make herself seem bad just because people were so sexist back then that they couldn't believe that a woman could be important or good or the real God. Though I cry out I've been wronged, I get no response. Though I call for help, there is no justice. So basically, the sacrifice of God is going to call out for help and know she's been wronged, but there's not going to be any justice. And
for every day, almost every hour of that whole first year, this is how I felt. I felt like I was in extreme agony. No one gave a shit. No one was willing to tell me what was happening. No one was willing to help me. It was a horrible, horrible feeling. I was trying to remain calm about it. I've got completely dry ends in this video, I know. I felt like I woke up every single day with a massive headache, like I'm in a dream that I couldn't wake up out of, like I couldn't understand what's happened, like my whole world had just shifted, like the reality that I was living in before no longer existed, and now I was living in a world where I seem to connect to everything, and yet not one person seems to actually care about me, not one person is questioning why they have to ignore me. Not one person is questioning how I would feel at the end of this, or how I was feeling every single day whilst I was being ignored. I felt like people were spying on me. I felt like people were watching me. I felt like my room had been bugged. I've got a cyst on the back of my neck, and I was wondering if someone had snuck into my room when I'm sleeping and plugged a microphone in there. I was paranoid about everything. I was paranoid about the massage clients that I was seeing. What happens if these people knew that I was a goddess? It was obvious that a lot of people did know. So were people kind of watching me, watching this sort of horrible harassment that I was getting on a daily basis? I didn't take that many clients. I really did reduce my number of clients to the very limit. But at the same time, then I was stressing out over how am I going to pay my bills, how long I'm going to have to wait. I didn't believe that I'd be waiting 3 years. So I thought, I've got 50,000. I'll just live off my savings for a few years and it'll be fine, because my rent is about 12,000 a year, so I can at least live for 3 years and I don't have to pay anything. But at the same time, then I was just stressing, what happens if nothing does happen? Because every week I was believing that something was going to happen and yet it didn't. And so I was kind of just confused. I was bored. I was like, what else do I do? Why can't I just go to a doctor? Well, because the doctor wouldn't believe me. Why can't I just go to a preacher? Why can't I go to a church? Why can't I go to anyone? Why can't I just go to the people on the streets that are walking up and down? The news people. I was constantly watching the news and they're having all these stupid headlines about things that just aren't important, and yet I have the biggest news in the world, and yet I couldn't just walk into a news agent and tell people my truth, because they wouldn't care. They wouldn't want to care. They believe what they want to believe and they don't want to help me or support me. They just are blind and living their own ignorant life, and they're happy living their ignorant life. And it was a horrible feeling just to feel so isolated and cut off from everyone. I don't have any friends. I don't have a life. No one really gives a shit about me. That's just how my whole life has been. And I couldn't go and tell people that I'm the Christ, because most people would just be like, well, you have your beliefs and I have mine. Bye-bye. That's literally about as much interest as I can get out of people. People only do things when they can make money out of it. And if there's a bunch of elite people that have tons of money, and if these people are going to give them money to not say anything, then that's what they're going to do. People worship money. People worship people with money and power. And they would never worship someone like me. And it's because of that I have to suffer. But I tell you, whoever is arranging this, I will make sure that you pay for this. True, I know you probably already are paying for it, but I mean in a physical way. If I have power when I'm dead, then I'm going to make sure that as soon as I die, you're going to get what's coming to you.
He has stripped me of my honour and removed my crown from my head. Jesus never had a crown on his head, so therefore, why is this person saying my crown has been removed? Whereas this person probably once in the heavens was an actual princess, whereas Jesus never said that he was king before his time. He always referred to himself as being the Son of God. He was like born of Mary. He never said that before he was born he was actually alive and well and kicking in heaven. I know some people think that he is God, he is the Father as well, but no, he said the Father lives within me. He didn't say that I am the Father. It's different. His anger burns against me. He counts me among his enemies. Again, Jesus wasn't God's enemy, and this person feels that God is his enemy. His troops have advanced in forces. They build up siege and ramps against me and encamp around my tent. This is not true. I mean, this is like troops, forces. This is talking about hundreds of thousands of people are coming up against me. This sounds more like the last days, when he says, all the angels of the dragon of Satan will make war with the Lamb. I mean, this is what it sounds like, but this is talking about
a Messiah that comes to suffer. Jesus apparently is supposed to have already done the suffering, so he's not going to come back and make war with lots of people and suffer through this. He's not going to have hundreds of people coming up against him, because apparently his sacrifice has already happened, but according to this, it hasn't already happened. Why? Because it's actually talking about me. I couldn't understand why people were acting like they were helping me whilst at the same time just ignoring me, and yet people couldn't understand how horrible it was for me. I was literally experiencing exactly what this tormented soul of the Bible was going through, and yet not one person seemed to think, oh wait, maybe we shouldn't make songs about her because it's actually hurting her. I mean, I was letting them make songs because I was believing that it was going to be over soon. I just couldn't understand why they weren't helping me, and why they were looking like they didn't seem to care or didn't seem to know about what was happening to me, when surely they would have heard that I'm the bride of Christ. And if they would have heard this, they would have just needed to read the Bible to realise that I wasn't happy. I wasn't okay with what was being done against me. I felt like I was completely trapped, and I still feel like I'm trapped. I felt like I couldn't live. I felt like I was just waiting every day for something to happen, believing that it was going to happen, and yet nothing was happening, and no one in this world cared. To know that this is the book that you worship, this is the book that millions of people worship, and it's all about my suffering, and you don't worship me, you worship the thing that causes me to suffer. It's horrible. Just the ignorance that exists in this world. And yet you would go around calling yourself good, godly people, when really all you're doing is just ignoring me.
I thought Jesus was going to come back as a king in his last days, but this bit's talking about troops all around him, and even in Revelations it says that there'll be troops all around him and they'll all gang up against him, proving again that the sacrifice wasn't actually made 2,000 years ago. Jesus was just a messenger only. He has alienated me from my brothers. Brothers here could also mean sisters as well. Just take away the sexism of this book. My kinsmen have gone away, my friends have forgotten me. Jesus' friends didn't forget him. He had friends and they were there and they were crying, so yeah, his friends hadn't forgotten him, they just couldn't help him. They look at me as an alien. They didn't see him as an alien, they saw him as a person who was sent from God, but not an alien, it's different. They didn't see him as something from outer space. I summoned my servant, but he does not answer. Jesus didn't actually have any servants, but I think servant is just meaning partner. I call for my partner. Babylon is the god, and her king is just the kind of servant, but servant isn't a particularly nice word for it. But Babylon summons her king, and he does not answer, though I beg him with my own mouth. My breath is offensive to my wife. Well, that's one thing. Jesus didn't have a wife, according to the Bible. Jesus didn't have a wife. But here, he says that this sacrifice does actually have a wife, although because of the sex system, you have to turn wife into husband. All my intimate friends detest me. I thought Jesus didn't really have any intimate friends because he was really against love. But again, if this is talking about Babylon, Babylon was supposed to have loads of intimate friends, although intimate to me doesn't actually mean sexual. All my intimate friends detest me. Well, you could not say the same to Jesus, because although his friends did betray him at the end, they didn't detest him. To test is where you feel disgusted for someone, or you think they're a liar or something like that. And although his closest friends did deny him, they didn't detest him. They knew in their heart that he was telling the truth, but they just didn't want to die, so they said that he's not with me. I am nothing but skin and bones. I have escaped only by the skin of my teeth. Well, this person says that this person isn't actually going to die. It says, I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. Jesus didn't escape by the skin of his teeth, because Jesus died, and so the torturing that this person is going to face is actually going to survive it, but is probably going to feel very dead inside afterwards. Have pity on my friends, have pity, for the hand of God has struck me. Why do you pursue me as God does? Will you never get enough of my flesh? So this is kind of saying that people around me are trying to get hold of me and get hold of my spirit. But yeah, people around him weren't trying to get hold of his flesh. The fact that 1920 says, I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. Jesus didn't escape by the skin of his teeth. So yeah, that's not about Jesus. When he has filled his belly, God will vent his burning anger against him. Jesus didn't go through that. Jesus didn't receive burning anger from God. It was torture from people again. But Babylon the Great, she has got some burning anger from God. That's the one. Or Zion, another one. It's so all this just proving that Jesus is not God. Go down, sit in the dust, virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, daughter of the Babylonians. No more will you be called tender and delicate. Take a millstone, grind flour, take off your veil, lift up your skirt, bare your legs, wade through streams. Your nakedness will be exposed, your shame uncovered. I will take no vigorance, I will spare none. Our Redeemer, the Lord Almighty, is his name. The Lord, the Holy One of Israel. So this also sounds like the same person going through suffering, only this time they're referring to her as a girl. Actual Babylon the Great. I mean, this sounds like the real sacrifice of God. It can't be talking about a nation. If you think this is talking about a nation of people, it's silly, because people in Babylon like to cover up their hair, they like to cover up their clothes, and to think that this is going to happen to the whole city is just crazy. So this is clearly not talking about a group of people, and a lot of people do like wearing short skirts, so if it's actually just talking about a girl that likes wearing short skirts, then it doesn't sound quite as bad. And sit in silence, go into darkness, daughter of Babylon. Again, you can't just take a whole group of people and just go sit in darkness and just sit in a room and do nothing. I mean, that's not how it works. There's a lot of people that, even if people are in darkness, they don't just sit in darkness. They do things. Their minds are a bit in darkness, but this is obviously referring to one person who feels like they've been imprisoned. No more will you be called Queen of the Kingdoms. Well, no group of people is called a queen of kingdoms, so this is literally referring to a person. I was angry with my people and desecrated my inheritance. I gave them into your hands and you showed no mercy. Even on the aged you laid a heavy hand on your yoke. So whoever this woman is someone with extreme power, because in her hands are all the people. God has given her all the people. This is probably mortal, big God talking about mortal God, and they're in your hands as in they're made in her image perhaps. They're trying to follow the lead of this person. They can only feel her through a spiritual connection rather than through an actual physical connection. You said, I will continue forever, the eternal queen, but you did not consider these things or reflect what might happen. Well, this bit's saying that I'm the eternal queen. We can't be talking about a nation again because there isn't a nation of people that are referred to as a queen. So this is obviously talking about the real queen, and this real queen didn't consider how bad the consequences would be, as in her sacrifice, a guilt sacrifice. This is her guilt sacrifice, and you didn't consider that this is what you might have to pay for it. So someone's paying for sins, and it's talking about a woman that pays for the sins of people, of the nation.
I also have to point out that this book is a bunch of lies and deceptions. There's so many things that are just not true. There's so many things that are just designed to be against me. And so just because it says something in the Bible doesn't mean that it's actually true, doesn't mean that it's saying that I'm not actually not a queen because it says that I'll lose my throne. You know, this is just a prophecy of a suffering Messiah. But I'm saying that some things are true and some things are not true. I'm just pointing out that it's definitely not about Jesus.
Now then, listen, you wanton creature. Okay, why is God calling this woman a wanton creature? Sounds like there's a big bitch battle between these two people.
I'm all mixed up, feeling cornered and rushed. They say it's my fault. They're looking at me. Will I ever be free? Have I crossed the line?
Lounging in your security and saying to yourself, I am, there is no one besides me, I will never be a widow. Well, if this person's God, then that's why she would be saying it. I mean, why would someone say, I am, there is no beside me, I would never be called a widow nor suffer the loss of any children? Maybe the reason why she's not going to suffer the loss of any children is because she is God, and whether people live or die, they still go through her and be reborn again. Well, if this is talking about a whole nation of people, why would a whole nation of people saying, oh, I'm not going to suffer the loss of any children? Because that's silly, because a lot of people do immigrate to different countries and stuff. So again, clearly not talking about a nation of people, nor is it talking about Jesus. Both of these will overtake you in a moment, in a single day, loss of children and widowhood. They will come upon you in full measure. So this woman is taking the sins of the world, and she's going to have to pay for it in full measure. And Jesus never paid for the sins of the bad, because he just blamed the bad people and being like, oh, they're not of me, they're of the devil's seed, and he didn't actually take responsibility for the bad people, whereas this woman is actually going to have to take responsibility for both good and bad people. In spite of your many sorceries and all your potent spells, you have trusted in your wickedness and have said, no one sees me. Okay, Jesus didn't say that, and a whole nation of people. Why would a whole nation of people say no one sees me? Because a lot of people see a lot of nations, so there's no nation of people that is hidden. I suppose there's like the Illuminati that are hidden or something, but they're not, because there's tons of videos and information about them. So this is clearly a woman that is hidden. Your wisdom and knowledge mislead you. If she's a sacrifice of God, she's like led in like a sheep to a shearer, and well, therefore, however much wisdom she has, she'll never be able to escape this. That's what it's saying. When you say to yourself, I am, there is none beside me, disaster will come upon you, and you will not know how to conjure it away. So basically, when this woman wakes up and realizes that she's God, that's suddenly when something bad's going to happen, and she will not know how to conjure it away. This clearly isn't talking about a nation, because a nation wouldn't suddenly realise that they am and there is none beside them, because yeah, every nation or every group of people know that there are other people in the world, whereas this person realises that actually there is none besides her, because she is made in everyone's image, or everyone's made in her image, and therefore she is the one at the top of the triangle. A calamity will fall upon you that you cannot ward off with ransom. A catastrophe that you cannot foresee will suddenly come upon you. Again, the sacrifice of God talking about, keep on then with your magic spells and with your many sorceries, which you have laboured since childhood. Well, Eve's lived since childhood, and if the magic spells happen to be on people and just rebirthing them and keeping them in the cycle, keeping them alive basically, well, that would explain it. I mean, this woman is obviously clearly very, very powerful, and who is more powerful than God? Well, this woman sounds like she's as powerful as God, because all the children have been handed over to her, and if all the children on earth have been handed over to her, then clearly she is God. Perhaps you will succeed, perhaps you will cause terror. Well, yeah, I think a lot of people have been caused terror, but, fear of the Lord is the thing of wisdom. And, well, this person is saying, perhaps you will cause terror. All the counsels you have received have only worn you out. Let your astrologers come forwards, those stargazers who make predictions month after month. Astronomers are quite smart people, and if they're described as her people, well, I guess all people are her people, so, because she is God, so that makes sense.
She's a god.